In June 1985, Parks Canada honored a handful of pioneers who had made mountaineering history in Yukon's Kluane National Park. Having met the challenge of Kluane, the more senior members of the reunion now accepted another. 3 days of trial by press.
Just a Barry back up. What farther there, Barry?
Okay, here we go.
All right.
It's gonna go here.
Okay, I'm ready.
3,
It's all in the
4,
timing now, Karen.
2,
Okay.
1.
In the lee of the Kluane Range, just 60 miles east of Mount Kennedy, the guests assembled.
Well, welcome everybody to the press conference for the Pioneer Mountaineering Fraternity Reunion. My name is Brent Little and I'm a Centennial Coordinator. And it's my pleasure today to welcome many of the people who have played a very prominent role in pioneering in the St. Elias Mountains. I use that term pioneering because these people are not merely mountaineers. They've had a very long list of accomplishments, as many as 50 to 60 years ago. And not only just climbing mountains, they've also been involved in geographical and scientific research in the St. Elias Mountains. So I'd like to just briefly introduce each person and some of the accomplishments that they've done. Immediately to my left is Willie Pfister. Willie is our Alpine Specialist with Parks Canada, stationed in Western Regional Office. Willie had a long history of ascents on Mount Logan. He made the second ascent of the East Ridge of Mount Logan in 1959. Brad, you as a member of the National Geographic Yukon expedition in 34-35 first flew in via Carcross, I believe, and then across to the St. Elias, sponsored by the National Geographic Yukon expedition, and from there did the first aerial overflight of Kluane. Next to Brad is Bob Bates. Bob was with Brad Washburn in the 1934-35 National Geographic Yukon expeditions, and also made the first ascent with Brad of Mount Lucania in 1937. And welcome, Bob, to Kluane National Park.
I like being back.
Next to Bob is George Wallerstein. George has made many first ascents, Snowfield Peak and Mount Strickland in 1957, Mount Slaggard and Mount Macaulay in 1959, and MacArthur Peak in 1961. George also made the second ascent of Mount Wood in 1959. Welcome to Kluane National Park, George. Next to George, we have Father Anderson Bakewell from Santa Fe, New Mexico. And Father Bakewell has had, again, another long list of accomplishments. Father Bakewell was a part of the expedition, the Wood Yukon expeditions in 1939 and 1941. And during these expeditions, he made the ascent of a mountain called Mount Tempest in 1941 solo. This was attempted in more recent times by a larger team of mountaineers who didn't make it to the top. Next to Andy Bakewell is Walter Wood. And Walter has had a lifetime of dedication and research to the St. Elias Mountains dating back to 1935. And in that year, Walter was involved with the first Wood Yukon expedition, which came to Kluane, sponsored by the American Geographical Society. Welcome, Walter, to Kluane Park.
Thank you. It's nice to be home.
Next to Walter Wood is Edith DeSaley Powell. Edith is the daughter of Edmund DeSaley, and he was involved in the International Boundary Commission survey between the years of 1906 and 1913. And her father, Edmund True DeSaley, is that correct pronunciation? Was here in those years and did the first comprehensive mapping of the International Boundary Survey. When he came in here between years 1906 and 1913, what stories did he tell you of his journeys into the Yukon?
Well, we grew up on all sorts of stories, but I can't really remember any particular ones. I do remember asking him one time why he started on this boundary survey, and he said, well, you know, they discovered gold in the Yukon, and we had to get out there and survey that border to keep the Americans from coming over and stealing our gold.
Fortunately, the boundary didn't deter collaboration. On June 23, 1925, a joint Canadian-American team made the first ascent of Mount Logan. Frequently obscured, the peak rises to 19,850 feet. Deceptive in its sunlit tranquility, not all who dared to throw down the gauntlet lived to tell the tale. At a special mass, mountaineer and missionary, Father Anderson Bakewell, brings the spiritual and physical realms of God into closer perspective.
Which earth is given and human hands have made will become for us the bread of life. This is the gospel of the Lord. This is a memorial mass for past pioneers of the St. Elias Mountains. None are to be forgotten. Our Foresta, Valerie, Phil Upton, Frankie Bay, Copper Joe, Moose, Jean and Louis Jacko, the Oblate fathers who cared for them, the pioneers who have died in these mountains or have gone elsewhere to render the inevitable account. The sketch will be broad, but all will be comprehended, none forgotten. There appeared off the fog-bound coast a small, newly built square rigger, the St. Peter, separated from its companion ship, the St. Paul, out of Okhotsk and Kamchatka. After weeks of wandering, on July the 16th, Vitus Bering, a Dane in the service of Imperial Russia, saw America. It must have been a breathtaking sight. The clouds parted, and there, haloed in the bright sunshine, stood the peaks of the awesome St. Elias Mountains. Following the custom of his time, Bering named the dominant peak in honor of the saint whose feast day it was, Elijah, or Elias.
Father Bakewell, you were with Walter, who led the Wood Yukon expeditions between the years of 1935 and 1941. Walter, what were the logistics that were involved in some of these early expeditions? I know that you led the last expedition in the St. Elias Mountains that did not have aerial support, and surely the expeditions that you were involved with in those early years is a totally different type of affair from what we're involved with now, with the advantage of aerial support. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Well, of course, up to 1935 and even through 41, the only way to get into these mountains was either to walk in and carry your house on your back, or to go in with a pack train as far as the horses could possibly take you, and then work it out from there. Go back to the Logan expedition. Nobody had an airplane to help them get to the top of Logan. Everybody had to work like the devil to bring freight and bring in supplies and every bit of impedimenta that was going to be used or they thought was going to be used for the climb itself. And once these logistics had been worked out, they're perfectly standard as far as mountaineering was concerned until the airplane came. And when the airplane came, it did one of two things. It could either drop you supplies at a predetermined point on the ground, or else it could fly you in and land you if a landing site was available to be used. Logistics were very simple. What I'd like to do, if I might, is to think of some of the things we didn't know when we went into these mountains. We knew we were going to big mountains. All of us, Brad and certainly Andy, myself, Bob Bates, had climbed big mountains before. We'd climbed big mountains in civilization. We'd start in the morning and climb Rainier and come back and have supper and sleep in a warm bed. Or we'd be in Zermatt and climb the Matterhorn and come back the next day and rest for 3 days down there playing bridge or doing any one of a number of things, and then start off again. And that is the sort of training most of us had before we ever went into the wilderness. And when we went into the wilderness, we thought we knew all the answers, but we didn't. When we got into Steel Creek, we were camped in an absolutely beautiful grassy meadow, and everything had gone normally. It was just like an alpine climb, although the horses had gotten us there. And the first disaster that happened was that Joe Phobes had decided to do his laundry. So he did his laundry, and it was all very neat, and he put his handkerchiefs all out on the grass. It was a beautiful sunny day, and other items, other garments, and so forth. But the handkerchiefs were very important to him. And we went off to do a job. Well, an hour later, he came back again. He looked for his handkerchiefs. Well, there weren't any handkerchiefs. The gophers had gotten them, of course, and we'd gone down every gopher hole and within 100 yards and making a comfortable bed for the gophers for the next winter. Well, there's all these stupidities that you never think about. You never do them at home. They don't happen to you at home. You get in the wilderness, you make an ass of yourself. But you don't usually do it a second time.
It was summer of 1935 that Walter Wood set his sights on the summit of Mount Steele, and on August the 15th reached its top. History was being made. He and his 3 companions were the first at the summit and the last to use pack horses. Future major expeditions would use the airplane. 25 years later, Walter spearheaded the Icefield Ranges Research Project, and in 1961, the geographical reconnaissance got underway. Greatly assisted by the unique Helio Courier aircraft. The year before, a base had been established at mile 1054 on the Alaska Highway along the shore of Lake Kluane. This time, Walter Wood was the director of the project. In 1985, the facility is still being used by students interested in elements of the St. Elias environment, and it has been instrumental in aiding over 380 to obtain postgraduate degrees. After 50 years of service, Dr. Wood's contribution to Kluane was officially recognized by the Commissioner of the Yukon Territory, Mr. Doug Bell.
Some time ago, someone wrote this about our Yukon. I wish it had been me. He said, "This Yukon is a hard and demanding country. For the most part, it has always attracted the more self-reliant, individualistic, and adventurous types of people. Most asked little of others, but gave freely of themselves. They were people worth knowing and people worth remembering. It's fair to say that describes those gathered here today. And we are fortunate that it attracted this fraternity and generally and specifically Dr. Wood. I wish to ask Dr. Wood to come forward. All of his works on Kluane are dedicated to the people of Yukon. Today, I would like to present a Commissioner's Award to Dr. Wood, coming from those people with our appreciation. And a Commissioner's Award at this time is the highest award that the Yukon can present to any individual. And we also have a certificate that goes with it, and it's inscribed, presented to Dr. Walter Wood, for the challenge of the northern wilderness is met by special people who rise to the very heights of its mountainous peaks. Dr. Wood has accepted the challenges of the St. Elias Mountains, lived with them, learned from them, and shared that love and knowledge with the Yukon's people.
With Walter in 1948 was Alan Bruce Robertson, a member of the Arctic Institute's project, Snow Cornice.
Welcome to Kluane, Alan. And he participated in the first ascents of Mount Vancouver in 1949. And also he was involved in the Centennial Expedition in 1967 and climbed Good Neighbor Peak, which is another part of the Mount Vancouver Massif. How many people were involved in this 1967 assault?
There were approximately 10 teams of about six or eight people each, and there were 8 on ours, plus the two general camps that were held on the Steel Glacier.
So probably in all, I think there were, over 100 people, weren't there, Walter, involved in that particular 67 Centennial Expedition?
Far more than that, because the general camp, there were 2 general camps, one following the other, and each one must have had at least 50 people. So I was, plus the climbing parties in the Centennial Range, plus Ellen's Mount Vancouver group, 150 to 175 at least.
Brad, you as a member of the National Geographic Yukon Expedition in 34-35 first flew in via Carcross, I believe, and then across to the St. Elias, sponsored by the National Geographic Yukon Expedition, and from there did the first aerial overflight of Kluane. What was it like to be one of the first men to record the interior of what was then an unexplored area?
I think the most fascinating flight that we ever had was not the one that, Bob, that you and I made around Logan the first time, which would have been in March 35, when we started from Carcross and in essence flew over Cussawa Lake and Desert Ash and Bates Lake and up the Lowell Glacier. And of course this was a most thrilling experience to come over the crest of that divide at the head of Lowell, and for the first time have this thrilling experience of seeing this entire area that nobody had ever laid eyes on before. Heck, everybody's flying over it now, reading the New Yorker and looking out occasionally while they're being served cocktails. But it was a great experience, and
Sure was.
We were chatting earlier about what happens if the motor quits. Well, that would have been the end of the thing because nobody knew where on earth we were, and we had no radio, and nobody else had radio. But we didn't think about that. We just wanted to get back for supper at the Caribou Hotel, moose, where we ate the same damn moose. we ate different parts of the same damn moose that whole winter. They killed it in October and kept it in the shed and just sawed off pieces of it every day.
One of the more interesting expeditions that both you, Brad, and Bob Bates were involved with is 1937 ascent of Mount Lucania. And my understanding is that the first plane came in, dropped you fellas off with minimal amount of provisions, and he says, I'm sure as hell not coming back here again. Oh. You were faced with a decision of
You're absolutely wrong.
Either climbing or
You're
going
absolutely
back with
wrong.
them.
You're
And you
absolutely
decided
wrong.
to
We didn't have a minimum amount of provisions. We had more darn stuff than you could shake a stick at. Where we landed, we had food for 4 of us for 2 months. But that was where it was, and the airplane couldn't get back to take us out, and it couldn't get back to take our 2 companions in. And everybody said, well, why did you go out into the Yukon instead of back into Alaska? There were 2 darn good reasons. Alaska was a terrible distance back, because we'd just flown over that and seen it. And the other way out was, Bob and I both said, anything Walter Wood can get up, we can get down.
So, Bob, your alternative then was to go over the top of Mount Lucania, one of Canada's highest peaks, and then over the top of Mount Steele and boot it out.
Well, that was in 37, that was the problem. How we were going to climb the peak and get out. And the easiest way out was really to climb up on the Steele-Lucania Plateau and then go out from there. And of course, we were lucky we were able to climb Lucania and then climb Steele, which was near our camp, and start down the long ridge on the other side. We had hoped to find a cache at the foot of the mountain. And we had troubles on coming down Steele because we'd cut the bottom out of the tent, and we limited ourselves to 1 sleeping bag. One fellow slept with his head out this way and one with his head out this way. And I'd hear him mumbling down there somewhere, and I'd hear noises, and I'd say, yes, I know we're out of sugar. And there'd be more kicking, and I'd say, oh, yes, I'll stop kicking you in the ear. So that we actually cut ourselves down to the minimum we could carry down the ridge. We got down the ridge. The lower part of it was frozen gravel, which was rather difficult with a heavy load, and finally reached the glacier. Couldn't find that cache anywhere. So we said, well, there's another cache down Wolf Creek, now called Steele Creek, and we'll find that. I know we can get that one. And we found it all right. We got down there as fast as we could, but the bears had found it before we did, and everything had been bitten into by bears except 1 little can of peanut rabbit peanut butter, and boy, we liked that. We took that with us, got down to the Donjek, stripping off our long underwear and other things on the way, and once on the other side, we figured we had it made. We found some mushrooms and a squirrel. By this time, we were very low on supplies.
I'm going to interrupt, because Bob had a pistol, and the sights on the doggone pistol were so that in order to hit things, you had to aim always a little above and to the right of where the thing was. And the question was, the further away it was, the more above and to the right. And Bob hit this doggone squirrel. And that was all we had to eat for one day.
I didn't tell you at the time, but the squirrel was up on a tree making noises at us. And I took a shot at him and missed, and all we had were just a few shells. The revolver had belonged to the uncle of one of the fellows who didn't get in, because we only made 1 flight in, and Bob Reeve wouldn't come back for us a second time. Well, I had no chance to practice with it. Well, I missed, and I walked around again the other side of the tree and fired, missed again. Brad groaned, and the 3rd time, I hit the branch right under the squirrel, and the squirrel fell down and hit his head, and I grabbed the squirrel. And Brad said, great shot. I never told him till later.
(1965) might have been called the year of Mount Kennedy. 4 major research and survey agencies had projects centering on and around this mountain. So too did Robert Kennedy, brother of the late president, who made it known that he would like to be first at the summit. Coordinating the National Geographic Society's joint venture with the Boston Museum of Science, Brad Washburn pressed on with his survey work and Robert Kennedy's wishes. Both projects were successfully concluded. With the press photo session nearly complete and a Jet Ranger at hand, the opportunity for Brad to climb one more peak is just too much to miss. In commemoration of Brad's 50 years of contribution to Kluane, Barry Bishop of the National Geographic Society invites Brad to the podium.
This reads, "Pioneers of the St. Elias, in recognition of the persons who first accepted the challenge of the St. Elias Mountains, their contribution awakens our understanding, appreciation, and the awareness of Canada's highest range of great mountain peaks. Presented to H. Bradford Washburn in honor of Leader, National Geographic Yukon Expedition 1934-35, Aerial Survey of Mount Kennedy 1965, First Descent Mount Lucania 1937, Second Ascent, Mount Steele, 1937. It's my honor.
Thank you very much, Barry. I've got another little quote that I think is interesting and relevant maybe at this point. When you try to go back and snug things up, it's usually a good idea to go way back, and I want to slip back a couple of thousand years to Aristotle. The search for the truth is in one way hard and in another easy, for it is evident that no one of us can ever master it fully, nor miss it wholly. Each one of us adds a little to our understanding of nature, and from all the facts assembled arises a certain grandeur.